some people would see it as a scary thing, but I think we should embrace the fact that we have this never ending pool of opportunity when it comes to just continuing to learn our craft. And I would just encourage people, one, don't give up, don't get frustrated, and just keep learning. Keep learning, keep learning.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Band, a podcast that features conversations with composers, conductors, and performers of music for winds and percussion. My name is Mark Connor. I'm a composer and educator, and each week I have the good fortune to speak with and share the stories and wisdom of musicians and leaders in the band community. The Everything Band podcast is a proud member of the Music Teachers Development Podcast Network. The Muted Network provides support in the form of audio-on-demand programming designed by and for music educators. You can find more information about our network at mutedpodcasts.com. Before we begin, I'd like to thank all of you for listening. I appreciate your time and hope that you are finding value from these interviews. I rely on word of mouth and social media to bring the show to new listeners. If you think you knew one or two people who might find these interviews useful, please let them know about it. You can also help by following me and sharing posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Remember, help your students live up to the best that is in them through music. And now on to my next guest, Mike Howard. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Mark. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for joining me on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate the invite, Mark.
Yeah, you were recommended to me by Mr. Floyd, Richard Floyd, and I've already interviewed one teacher in your district for this show, which means that your district is now in the second place. So I've had 3 teachers from Fairfax County in Virginia, and now 2 from Leander ISD. So can you introduce yourself to the listeners and tell them who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Mike Howard, and I'm the director of bands at Vandegrift High School in Leander ISD. Vandegrift is a school in the northwestern outskirts of Austin, Texas, so kind of right in the middle of the state. And, I am Texas born and bred, and I actually grew up in a small town. I'm a band director's kid. As actually Darcy, who you also interviewed, was also a band director's kid in my same region. We grew up playing in region band together and things like that. So we actually played the all-state band together under Jim Keene several years ago. Just a small world. But I grew up in a small town, a high school of approximately 500 students total. It's 3A Texas high school at the time, and had my dad as the band director. And, it was one of those schools where we did everything. We could be in the band and play sports and do theater and do journalism. And there's definitely something special that came from that. I got to try everything out. But honestly, as far back as I could remember, I always wanted to do music of some type. My dad handed me a pair of drumsticks as a 4th grader, and I never looked back. And I, early on, if you had asked me in high school, I was going to be a famous jazz drum set player. And I played a lot of drum set, played a lot of percussion. And as I got to my senior year, there was no question that I was going to try and go and be a music major. So I left, and I went to school at Southwest Texas State University in San Marcos, which is now called Texas State University in San Marcos, and really was exposed to a whole new world of music, a new group of people. I'd never heard an orchestra before, been around an orchestra before, a different level of marching band experiences and percussion ensemble experiences and jazz ensemble experiences. So it really opened up a new world for me. I got a great network of friends that were all percussionists, and I continued on through school. I marched in drum corps in college, which was a great experience for me, just in terms of learning how to do something at a high level and how to put a team, put a group in front of myself. So I was a member of the Madison Scouts Drum and Bugle Corps, and ended up teaching the Madison Scouts for a year as I finished college. And, when I finished going to school, right towards the end, I was doing a lot of work at teaching lessons and playing a little bit with the Austin Symphony and teaching drum lines in the area, and had really spread my wings as a percussionist in Austin. And I got to that, that pivotal moment that we get to as music education majors, where we finally decide, well, one, can I get a job? And two, what kind of job do I want to get? And at the time in the Austin area, I was kind of known as a percussion teacher, and I wanted to be a band director. I wanted to learn the wind instruments better, and I wanted to go somewhere where nobody really knew me as a percussionist. So I took a job opening up a new high school as an assistant band director in Katy ISD, which is outside of Houston, kind of the far western area of Houston. And it was a whole new experience for me. I thought I knew what I was doing, but I'd soon find out, as many first-year teachers do, that I had a lot to learn. I hit that first job at Morton Ranch High School, which is a large high school in a large school district, fairly low socioeconomic population, and great kids. And I had a guy that was my head director at the time that I was learning from, named Ronnie Todd. Ronnie was a really smart guy. And, the thing that he did for me is he brought mentors my way. And that's where I kind of hit my first marquee moment for me in my teaching career. Ronnie had a very close friendship with Eddie Green, and said, well, I want to have Eddie mentor you. Are you willing to take a mentorship situation with Eddie Green? And of course I knew who Eddie was, and I'd heard all sorts of stories, both great and scary, and of course you don't say no to something like that. So Mr. Green started coming into the band hall and seeing my rehearsals every 3 weeks. He came once every 3 weeks, and he sat there for my hour-long class. And then we would spend an hour or sometimes 2 hours with him talking through everything we did and what I was doing well, and certainly what I needed to do better. And, I'll never forget the first rehearsal. Mr. Green came in and he watched the rehearsal, and we went to my office. And of course I was just, petrified. I don't remember a second of that rehearsal or what I said. I'm sure it was just comical. I wish I had a video of it. And he sat down with me and he said, you really don't know what you're doing at all, but it's okay because you're smart. So let's figure this thing out. And that's the first thing he told me. And he was a support network there for me for the next 3 years, and was just so key in my development as a percussionist, to start to have a real understanding of the workings of wind instruments and what type of air, how air works and how it needs to be used to make sound. He pushed me in the right direction of what he said. Okay, here's the first instrument you need to take a private lesson on, and then you need to move this, then you need to move to that, then you need to move to this. So I spent those 3 years with Mr. Green and taking private lessons on all the wind instruments to try and get my grip. So I understood what everything felt like, and what it felt for it to be difficult, and what it felt like when I got it, so I could reach my students better. Some of those wind instruments I did well at, some of them I was just terrible on, but I still stuck it out and did those lessons. I stayed there at Morton Ranch for, like I said, the next 3 years. And I moved to another high school as an associate director position at James E. Taylor High School in Katy ISD, still in the same school district, which was a whole new world for me. I went from a very regimented, strict environment that was probably, I hate to use the word sterile, because it was a great experience, but it was very, there was not a lot of coloring outside the lines, or not a lot of, the kids were very in line. Going to Taylor High School was a blessing in disguise. I got to do more stuff. I got to teach some different bands, and really got into teaching jazz band while I was at James E. Taylor High School. But most of all, I just had a blast with the people I worked with. I learned the value of how important it is to work with people that you love. And I don't know if I got better at band directing those 2 years I was at James E. Taylor High School, but I definitely learned to love just teaching music. And I knew when I was there that, okay, this is definitely what I'm supposed to be doing. Because I think as teachers, as band directors, I think we hit that 4 or 5 year mark and we have that question mark. Is this what I'm going to do for the next 25 years? Or is, if I'm getting out, now's the time, So those 2 years there was a great time. It was great fun. My wife and I had our daughter right around that time, and she started growing up in band halls and crawling around in band lockers, and as little kids in band halls do. And right about halfway through my second year, one of my very close friends, who I was actually childhood friends with, he and I went to school together, and we taught marching band together at Cedar Park High School. Jeremy Spicer called me up and said, Mike, would you always say you want to come back to Central Texas. Would you come? We're opening up a new high school in Leander. It's going to be really small, and it's splitting off of Cedar Park High School. They don't even have a name. They think it's going to be called 4 Points High School. And I said, well, sure. I talked to my wife about it, and we made that decision, as we try to do all decisions. And she was excited about going to Central Texas. So we took off, and I opened what would end up being called Vandegrift High School with Jeremy. I opened it up. There was the two of us to start. I was the assistant, and he was the head director. Vandegrift, actually, they changed that name to Vandegrift at the very last minute after a gentleman from the community who had just been killed in action in Iraq at the time. So this is 2008. When we moved and we headed to Vandegrift. And I'll never forget, I drove from Houston to go to this first rehearsal at this new school. The school wasn't finished yet. So I was meeting Jeremy at an elementary school in the neighborhood, and I walked through the school, coming from a large band program in Houston, walked through the school, and I passed by the cafeteria. I saw a little huddle of little kids in the cafeteria. I figured they were elementary kids, so I kept walking. And I finally called Jeremy. I said, "Where are you?" And he said, "Well, we're in the cafeteria." I said, "Okay, well, I saw somebody in the cafeteria." So I walked in, and sure enough, there's the Vandegrift Band, all 38 of them in the cafeteria. And bless their little hearts, they were all freshmen. They didn't know what high school band was, and we started the Vandegrift Band that day in the cafeteria, teaching those kids how to hold their horns and what we want them to do, and off we went. Jeremy and I added some staff members those first 3 or 4 years, and we worked there at Vandegrift together, trying to, honestly, when we opened the school, we just went around and we stole all the good ideas we could from all the schools all around the country that we admired. We want to take this part from this school, and this part from this school, and this part from this school. Our goal was to just build this utopian car of all these different car parts, from schools around the country. And we had a great time there for our first 5 years. And our fifth year, actually, a couple of weeks before summer band was about to start, Jeremy had an opportunity to go full time into his leadership company. And there it was. There was an opportunity to become the head band director at Vandegrift. It was a stressful opportunity, and not one that I saw as an opportunity at the time, because it was 2 weeks before summer band was supposed to start. But, after a very blunt conversation with one of my mentors at the time, a guy by the name of Tom Shine, he very clearly told me, he said, "Mike, I know a lot of people that have done this a lot longer than you that will not have these opportunities. You need to think harder about this." So I decided to do it. And the first year as a high school head band director was completely unexpected, in that There was so much that I thought it was going to be that it wasn't. It was definitely harder than I thought it was going to be, and it was definitely more gratifying than I thought it was going to be. And that was 7 years ago, and we've gotten a lot of opportunities to grow the program in the last 7 years. Those 42 students we started out with have turned into just under 400 students that are in the program right now. We're at 391 students, and the kids have gotten a lot of great performance opportunities at, whether it's at a convention or a marching band contest or a concert band festival. We've enjoyed some fantastic moments together. The last 4 years or so, especially, and we're looking forward to right before we found out that school was going to really have a new look to it, the students got really excited about being invited to a Midwest performance, which I'm very fortunate that the board has chose to roll that invitation. So hopefully it will happen. Should there be a Midwest in-person Midwest in 2021, that'll be a great way to kind of get our 21-22 school year going, preparing for that event. So that's kind of where we're at now. And, we are braving this whole new COVID world with everybody else. And we had a virtual summer band of sorts. We held this series of summer band seminars for the kids, and with the goal of just getting them connected without over Zooming them, as we can all be over Zoomed right now. But just a series of culture and leadership sessions and music sessions. And we have just started our official school year. We're 1 week into our official school year. And we right now as a staff are working in a phase-in plan for in-person instruction. We start to bring in small groups after school next week in preparation for potentially, hopefully, bringing in larger groups in the month of September should, our COVID situation here in Austin continue to trend in a positive direction. So that's where I'm at, Mark.
Well, that's a good summary. Lots of questions come from that. So I'm going to dig in here if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So some of these questions I have as I listen to you. And so one of the questions I like to ask my guests, and you kind of touched on a little bit, you're the son of a band director. But when did you know for sure that you were going to go into music? I mean, you mentioned that by your senior year you knew, but what was that decision? I mean, was there anything else that was sort of tantalizing to you?
I love journalism and I love history. I come from a family of teachers. My grandmother, my mom, my dad, my several aunts and uncles. I mean, we come from a family of teachers at various levels, from elementary age through collegiate teachers, and it always felt like it was, there's something in the water with my family. And I think teaching was always, even though there were other things I was telling myself I was going to do, I think it was always there. And it's always something that I knew was my passion and what I needed to be doing. I honestly would, if I'm a huge history nerd, I love history, I love art, love literature. If I were teaching anything else, I would love to teach history. And that would be my other thing. I mean, how fun is that? You literally just tell stories to kids all day, my best teachers, and this is probably the reason my best teachers have either been arts teachers, music teachers, or history teachers. They've had the most impact on me. Probably my hardest teachers, but my most passionate teachers have been in that subject. So maybe that's what it was, and I knew early on that I wanted to be a musician. I grew up in and around a band hall, going to football games and going to concerts. And it was always something that I admired, and something that always seemed like, man, this is the coolest job ever, because it doesn't even seem like work. You get to just do band all the time. So I would say pretty early on, it was kind of a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, I was the same way. My father was a history, economics, social studies teacher for most of his career. And I thought I was going to be a history teacher if I wasn't a music teacher. I was the same way. Same exact thing. Family of teachers. It's something about, it's like the family business.
You're right. And it's something it's probably me and my dad's, biggest source of connection. It's a real special connection that we have. We had in 2019, we played the TMEA Honor Band concert as a 6A honor band. And I got to share, my dad was my guest conductor, and we shared the stage, and he actually conducted our first piece. And it was this just special moment with he and I, and that probably from a personal level, probably one of the most memorable experiences I've had as a band director. But just sharing that time with him, and he's the reason that I grew up and wanted to be a band director in the first place. So it's one of those things. I completely agree. It's kind of a family business, and something that I don't think there was ever going to be a different path for me.
Yeah, I know this is not about me, but this just makes me think about my first high school teaching job. When I would finish my master's degree, the principal where my father was teaching called me up and said, "Hey, so we're going to start a band program. I just wanted to pick your brain and see what you had, what your thoughts were." And so I went in, and I was probably in like jeans and a t-shirt, right? 23 years old, whatever I was, 24. And he and I talked for like an hour and a half, at the school, and it was really informal. And then at the end of that hour and a half, he offered me the job to start the band program there. So I actually got to teach in the same school as my father for 4 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, it was. Wow. I was like, can I think about it? But I took the job, and I taught with my father for 4 years, and it was amazing.
That I cannot say. And, my dad's last 8 years teaching were probably my first 8 years teaching. And, it's funny, we never saw each other's bands ever, because we're both high school band directors. And
sure.
Everything conflicted. Every now and again, something would work out, but my mom would always come and see UIL or come and see one of our concerts or something like that. But we never saw each other's band. So it's been great. He's been retired for probably 8 or 9 years now, maybe eight, maybe 9. Mm-hmm. And it's been great since then. He's kind of gotten to know the program and know the kids. They know who he is, and he's gotten to be around, and he's, I don't know if he's living vicariously through me or if he just really enjoys coming and hanging out, but it's been neat since he's been retired, even though he's staying active, doing a lot of judging and doing a lot of stuff like that. But it's been neat having him around and getting to have him see the kids perform.
All right. So you mentioned that there's a couple things in there, and I want to talk about the idea of percussion, and then you talked about Eddie Green, and I just want to talk about the percussion thing first. Why did you feel that you needed to leave Austin? You mentioned that a little bit, but what was that decision to leave Austin?
Well, at that time, and I would say even now, we're very fortunate, I think, in a lot of the school districts in Austin, and really this started in the Houston and Dallas area and bled into Austin, but there's a lot of dedicated percussion band director positions in our area. These are, for example, Joe Hobbs, who's our percussion director at Vandegrift, he's a full-time band director, and he just teaches percussion 6 through 12. And that's all he wants to do. I keep giving him opportunities to conduct the band. He's like, no, I just want to teach percussion. But, and at that time, I felt like I wanted to get to spread my wings and learn to teach wind instruments. All the respect in the world for Joe and for Paul Pape, who was our previous percussion director. They are passionate about just teaching drums, and that's all they want to do. But I wanted to teach a band, and I felt like at the time I'd done a bunch of work, at the drum corps level, and taught a bunch of lessons and worked at some different high schools. And actually, there was a position in Leander ISD that I was about to apply for, a percussion position with maybe some band opportunities. And I wanted to just go somewhere that was unknown to me, and where I knew I would be thrusting myself out of my comfort zone, because I would be expected to teach all the wind instruments and be expected to get better at teaching all the wind instruments. So I made the choice to leave Austin, knowing that I hoped I would have the opportunity to come back. So that was ultimately that decision. It worked out because my fiance at the time who is my wife of 16 years now, also got a job in Houston. And I got my job in Houston about a month before we started dating. And by the time we were engaged, we both had jobs in Houston. So it all ended up, everything happens for a reason. But yeah, I wanted to make sure I was learning the wind instruments. And I didn't feel like I felt like the best place for me was to go and try something new and to learn from smart people and try and find smart mentors that would help me be honest with me and help me learn the instruments.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about Eddie Green as a mentor. Now, I know his book. I've read it a couple times. I have notes from it. I use some of those ideas. And you mentioned that he was scary. And the statement he said, you really don't know what you're doing at all. I think that resonates with every band director, because at some level, I feel like even after all these years, I still don't know what I'm doing. Sometimes it's like,
you're right.
Can you kind of dig in and talk about maybe, I don't know, just dig into that statement, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm sure many people listening to this know that, Mr. Green recently passed, and it's just been amazing to see the number of educators that he influenced. And the thing that I think I hold that statement close still, and I think as educators, if at some point you decide that you completely know that what you're doing, then it may be time to do something else. You know what I mean?
That's good advice. Yeah.
The sign of a great band director, it seems, is that they still feel like they don't know what they're doing. But Eddie was somebody that taught me that, first of all, great mentorship comes through communication and honesty. And he was always honest with me, never in a negative way, or I didn't take it negatively. I wanted to know what I needed to get better at. He had trust in me that I was going to work hard to figure out whatever he was telling me, but he was honest with me and what I needed to do and what I needed to get better at. Early on, I remember a rehearsal where he gave me a list of things to say. He said, we're going to do this exercise and you need to say one of these 10 things. And you can say any of the 10 because any of these 10 things are going wrong. So you need to pick from these 10 things. And he said, over time, your ear is going to develop to know which one of these 10 things you should be saying first. And, stuff like that, where he was in some ways very prescriptive in helping me get better. And in some ways was very, very motivating, that regardless of how well I thought things may be going, that he always kept me grounded, that things can continue to get better. But he was such a great mentor for me. And as I know he was for so many, and we had a very positive relationship. We lost touch when I left Houston for several years. He came to Austin a couple of times and worked with the band, but it's funny. He sent me a text in 2018. He and I probably hadn't had a conversation in 5 or 6 years. And he had told me that comment, 15 years prior. And he said, we had just done well at a honor band contest or something like that. And he sent me a text out of the blue and he said, I told you were smart. And that was it. I texted him back, nothing. You know what I mean? He had these ways of building you up and propping you up, but helping you understand that you are a constant learner, period. And if there's anything that I got from him that is so beneficial for a young teacher to get is that idea. And as so many of us have, my mentors, I had new mentors enter into my world as we went. You talked to Mr. Floyd, and he has certainly been a game changer for me in specifically the last 7 years. But that was from starting out as a percussionist who, I didn't learn much from those college pedagogy or those college methods classes. It's just God bless Southwest Texas State University, but I didn't leave with a lot of great pedagogy on my wind instruments. He was, I would say, the foundational aspect of me, one, feeling like I had the ability to be a band director, but two, making sure that I spent my entire career constantly trying to find a better way. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would say about Mr. Green.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. Can you maybe give us a couple of examples of some things that he specifically said that you didn't know? I'm just out of curiosity. What was like one of the lessons? I mean, we've all been there, but
we're talking about just pedagogy things.
Yeah. Like, I mean, what give me an example of something. Give me the sense of that.
Yeah. Like, the concept of vowel shape follow through at the release of a note, for wind players, or the concept of vowel shape at all, and the importance of maintaining it through sustaining. The concept of, where you need to breathe for, like, where are you breathing from? Where's the air coming into when you're taking your breath in? And the understanding that what separates a professional sound and an amateur sound is air support. There's so many other things. I mean, there's setup, there's embouchures, there's all those other things. But if there's one key ingredient that separates them, it's how they use their air. And that all comes from how well the intake is working and how well they've developed capacity for intake. These were all foreign concepts to me as a percussionist. And, as a percussionist, I'm not worried about note duration, really. He talked to me, he worked with me a lot on what to look for when I'm looking, are you watching the kids just as much as you're listening to them? Are you seeing the problem that you hear with the clarinet? Maybe it's the angle of the horn, or what does their bottom look like? Where are their corners? Are their corners going the wrong direction? I think that's one of the valuable things with his book. It's actually, there's two books that I require all of my student teachers to read. One is On Teaching Band by Eddie Green and Mary Ellen Cavett, and the other one is The Art of Teaching Music by Richard Floyd, because I think it covers the full spectrum of what you look for in a teacher. But he would give me very specific things. He taught me not to sing while my band's playing. Oftentimes we as band directors like to sing the song that we think we're hearing rather than open our ears and listen to the song that's actually hearing, or we're actually hearing,
Yeah.
So many little lessons that we use today. I still have that list of 10 things, and I share it with our younger teachers, and I share it with our student teachers, and I'll do the same thing with them. I'll say, look, somebody way, way smarter than me gave me this list, and we did it. I did a fundamental session, and these are the 10 things he told me I could say, whether it's faster at the front of the note, whether it's hold the vowel shape when you release the note, or be careful that you're not breathing into your chest. We don't want to see shoulders and chest lifting when you breathe, all those different things. I still try and share it, and I think the greatest thing we could honor Mr. Green with at this point is that generations of band directors to come are able to effectively teach their students through his practices. And, not all of his stuff, I think he is associated as a fundamental teacher, a master of fundamentals of sorts. But, if you go back and listen to his old Lake Highlands recordings or the U of H recordings, his kids play. He let those trombone players go, and they definitely were not in the box, so to speak, with those groups. While I think a lot of his teachings, or some people associate some of his teachings with that. In some way, some of the things that in fundamental work, people have turned it into that. But he let some colors sing through. That's for sure.
Well, you can take anything to an extreme.
That's right. I completely agreed.
I'd be fascinated to see that list. I'd really be interested in that if you want to share it. Yeah, no.
I will. Yeah, I'll send it your way, Mark, for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. I love that stuff. That pedagogy stuff, that's really one of my big passions is like, the teaching of teaching, the art of teaching.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. So, you mentioned that when you were let me make sure I get this correct. When you were at Taylor, you began to really sort of embrace teaching jazz.
Yep.
And that's not something that I talk a lot about on the show because I'm not much of a jazz musician. I mean, I taught it and I was okay, but it's not one of my passions. What advice do you have for those who are teaching jazz? Maybe they're starting to engage with their jazz ensemble, or they're going a little deeper than their first, experiences with it.
Well, there's two halves to that, I think. Yeah, I do think you can, in terms of the style, you can listen a lot. I mean, that would be thing number one. Listen. And, the thing, I think there's two things that we're most scared of when it comes to teaching jazz. And one is improvisation. Where do I even start with that? How do I teach a 14-year-old, that hasn't experienced a lot? How do I teach him how to improv? And I think the other big scary thing is rhythm section. We do a lot of research oftentimes on how to teach all these wind instruments, and we even try to conquer bassoon fingerings. But when it comes to, trying to teach bass guitar or jazz guitar or piano and drums and trying to piece all those things together, that can be kind of for some, a scary world. And, there are some fantastic resources available for teaching jazz. There's a gentleman in Texas, his name's Jose Diaz. He has a great jazz band at actually the school my wife went to, MacArthur High School in Houston. They played all over the country. They played internationally, and he's collaborated to do some great things to help teachers not be afraid of starting to teach kids improv and starting to get a rhythm section going. And obviously teaching the different styles and techniques that the wind section uses. And I think oftentimes we stray away from that whole improvisation idea where even some of our best classical musicians dedicate a portion of their daily practice to some sort of improvisation on their instrument. It may not be, take the A train, but it's just understanding and understanding how the instrument works. And I can tell you is I got to really dig into teaching jazz those 2 years. I honestly didn't know how good I had it. I happened to fall into a really talented upright bass player and pianist, and it was a game changer with a great trumpet section. I mean, it was a really special collection of students that I had there for a couple of years at Taylor. We took him to New Orleans a couple of times, which was just a gas. And we booked a venue there in the French Quarter. Didn't go to a festival, didn't go to a contest, didn't do any of these things. We just learned about 2 45-minute sets. And we booked a stage in the French Quarter, the one right there next to Café du Monde. And we played a couple of sets, and man, the kids thought I was crazy. I said, guys, and it was actually my dad that said, you need to try this. He said, just book it and learn the music and go start playing. So that's what we did. And they wanted to go to a jazz festival. I said, guys, we're going to go. Why do we go play for 3 judges? Let's go play in New Orleans. So we took the trip and we booked the venue, and we were probably 10 minutes in, and there was 300 or 400 people sitting on those steps watching the kids. And it was just a gas. It ended up becoming a regular yearly trip for the kids. Even after I left, they still do it. And it's, it was a special thing. And I had quite a bit of experience as a jazz drummer. I played a lot in college. It was how I paid for my apartment rent and my food while I was at school. But I really got into teaching jazz. I don't get to do it as much anymore. Unfortunately, it's something that I would love to get back to because it was just a blast. And I do think in Texas, it is a very underrepresented musical genre or ensemble. And in general, self-admittedly at my school as well, we have a jazz band of sorts, and we work together in the spring. But it's not something that a lot of the music programs in the state dedicate an especially large amount of time or energy to.
That's interesting. I taught in California, and jazz was a big part of the high school programs there.
Right.
There's some powerhouse jazz programs in California.
It's one of those things. In many ways, a lot of those kids in that setting, they learn skill sets that are going to allow them to play their horns in some sort of setting after high school, and it is a missing part of our program at Vandegrift, and we do it to some extent, and it's good, but it's not it's not done to its fullest as it could be, I guess I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think what you hit on a truth there is, and the kids who are especially motivated, our best students, they want to play in the very top group. If your top group is a jazz group, then they're going to learn jazz.
That's right.
If your top group's a concert band, then they're going to become classical players because they're pursuing the top level.
And, I've noticed with any of those, but especially with jazz, it takes like 2 or 3 kids that just totally nerd out on it. And they really start listening and they start improvising and they really get into it. And man, if you have that nucleus of 2 or 3 kids in a jazz ensemble, then it can really take off. Yeah,
especially like you mentioned, you had a bass player and a drummer. That's like, if you have that, you're golden. You're rolling.
You're right. A great pianist is just icing on the cake. That's just extra fun.
Those 2 are keeping the time. They're doing everything for you.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. All right. So, jazz is something I need to get a jazz person on here, talk about jazz teaching one of these episodes.
Absolutely.
All right. So you talked about building a program from 38 freshmen when you opened up Vandegrift. What are your thoughts about building a program? What are your best practices? What advice do you have for someone who needs to build their program up?
The first and foremost would be, one, to surround yourself with the right people. One thing I've learned from Mr. Floyd is that honestly, we are who we surround ourselves with. So you need to surround yourself with people that, A, that you're going to love teaching with, but B, that are not afraid to, in a professional way, disagree with you and help you get better. On the student end, I think the paramount thing with developing a program is that great bands are created by great individual musicians. And it takes a lot of time and energy to truly focus on individual musicianship, because focusing on individual musicianship means you got to listen to a lot of individual musicians. But I think oftentimes we are not willing to see what's behind the curtain, so to speak, and to really hear what those individuals sound like in the band, and to develop a culture where it's okay for the kids to play on their own in front of other kids. And it's, where the kids are, every kid is expected to have an individual curriculum that lasts the whole year, whether it's, trying out for the region band or doing a concerto competition or a solo performance or a recital. But just having that individual music component always present is a way to, not put the cart before the horse, so to speak. You know what I mean? If you go ensemble first and then try to create individual musicians, and you're going backwards. So I would say one huge thing from the beginning is we want to develop individual musicians. So surrounding yourself with great directors, great people, developing individual musicians. And then I'm passionate about student leadership in my program, is developing and having a comprehensive student leadership program that students, 1, aspire to be in, and 2, that grows them and prepares them to be successful adults. That we're kind of in the business of building adults, you know what I mean? And that student leadership team, which has grown to a team, it's about 76 students. I actually met with them this afternoon. They run the band program. We do, we teach them how to teach. We empower them. We let them fail, and we correct them and keep them going. I mean, they do all of the things. They load trucks. They organize banquets. They organize social events. They've helped us greatly with a lot of the technology stuff that we're doing. But a strong leadership team in a program can be huge, and it can provide students with some real opportunities that are going to help them when they get out of high school and they go work, or they go be in the military, or they go to school. So I would say those three big things. And you notice I haven't really talked about ensembles or marching band yet. I think all of those things are compilations of the other three. And we use those ensembles to coach the kids and teach them life lessons and teach them how to work hard and teach them how to develop achievable goals that we constantly try to meet. I think at times when we're developing a new program, we're so interested in getting a great sounding band as fast as possible that we don't just dig in and pull our sleeves up and try to make sure the clarinet embouchures are right, or try to, get the kids to love playing solo literature and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you said a bunch of things in there too that make me want to get in here, and we're going to dig into the leadership aspect. I'm going to circle back around to that, but I want to talk about your ensembles. I want to talk about your program, but I'm going to do it in a different way. Imagine that I'm a freshman trumpet player. That's my instrument. Joining your band, and does Darcy's school feed into yours?
No, she's in a different part of the district.
All right. Well, I was going to say coming from her school, but whatever middle school I'm coming from. So I'm just a freshman trumpet player, middle of the road, not a top player. So what does my high school career look like at Vandegrift in the band?
Middle of the road.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying not to be like the superstar or the word.
Absolutely. So you are going to first of all, as a freshman, you're going to audition into the program, and we're going to place you in a band. Every student that wants to be in the band is in the band. We don't cut any students from band. And middle of the road, you're probably going to end up either we have 4 concert bands. So you're either going to end up in probably the bottom of the second or mid third, maybe, concert band. And the first thing you're going to experience is a big Viper band culture camp that we do. And it's a bit of a drink the Kool-Aid camp. We want to connect that freshman. You as a freshman trumpet player, my goal for you is to have 400 friends before your first day of high school. I want you to know as many kids as you can. I want the upperclassmen to embrace you and get you on board before you even have walked the halls of the school. One of my goals for my student leaders is I want every freshman to have come to at least 4 section social events before the first day of summer band. Like I want them to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. And I don't, we don't talk competition with them. Obviously marching band and all that kind of stuff. There's enough competition inherently built into what we do to ever talk about it. But that kid needs to get to be a part of something special. And that would be the first thing you would experience as a trumpet player, hopefully, is a group of adults that know your name, and hopefully a lot of students that know your name when you're walking down the hall. And you've connected. Because it's been a long time since I've been a freshman in high school, but it's scary for those kids. The halls of a large high school can be ruthless, and they can be daunting, and I want to create a safe place for them in the band hall. And much like your band hall, our kids probably come and spend way too much time hanging out in the band hall. So that would be thing one. Thing two would be to develop a schedule for that student, to develop them as an individual musician. And we'll use Region Etudes for that. We try to get kids connected to private lessons. We have a healthy private lessons program. And if there's a student that can't afford it, we have a scholarship fund that's really become large over the years, to where typically we are able to connect that kid and take care of the private lessons if for some reason they're not able to do it. So we try to get them plugged in with a lesson teacher, and we build a individual listening calendar for them with one of the band directors. So they'll get to come in. It's typically once every 4 weeks. As the programs got larger, it used to be once every week, and they'll spin and basically do a lesson with a band director, and we'll listen to them play, and we'll have a connection and understanding how they play and give them improvement points. And then we'll see them again. Typically we see all kids in the band, at least for an individual private lesson, at least now, unfortunately, at least 3 times, but that's almost 1,200 lessons. It's a bunch to squeeze in. So that's the individual thing they're going to do. And then they're going to get injected into the marching band. And in Texas, and what we do, the whole band program does marching band. So everybody, there's not a curricular band during the day and a marching band after school. It's all marching band for all the kids for the months of September, October, and usually right at the beginning of November. Last year, a little longer. We went to the Grand Nationals event last year, so it drew on a little bit long. But we use the marching band to teach the kids how to do band. They learn how to rehearse. They learn what the expectations are. They learn how to push themselves. And then we finish up marching band. We dive right into their concert bands. That freshman trumpet player will be in their own dedicated concert band, and they'll learn a winter concert, and then they'll head on into the spring semester, and they'll spend the spring semester in concert band. We try to, in the spring semester, plug them into a chamber ensemble, and that will either involve a smaller group, or for that mid-level trumpet player, the best place for those kids to go is to join the trumpet choir or a brass choir, because that's kids with all skill levels. I'll have a wind ensemble kid standing right next to a concert band 2 kid playing the same piece together. And I think those mid-level players, they get excited being around those older kids from the top ensembles. And it's those large choirs or chamber groups that we do in the spring, along with their concert band curriculum they're doing during the day, is always a neat way to continue the same kind of camaraderie that they get in the marching band, where they're all together. So I guess to sum it all up, I want to get the kid immediately connected and get him to feel like he's part of something special, and to make him know that he has an instant support network. And then we go to work trying to get him to really fall in love with his trumpet and with music, and then hopefully by the time we get to the end of the year, we have that same student is motivated and wants to continue to excel and get better. But, we have plenty of kids in our program that they're just there because they love to be in the band, and they love to be part of a group and be around their friends. And as long as they put the work in and do a good job in rehearsal, I have no problem with that at all. We have students that are in the program for all different reasons. And sometimes that third band trumpet player, he ends up in the first band by his sophomore and junior year. And sometimes he's in the third band by his senior year. It just depends on the setting.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So what about this? I see this a lot, and I see it on your bio, the SASI. That's a leadership program?
Yeah, absolutely. SASI leadership is a program that I've spent I've worked with for the last 16 years. Yeah, 16 years. It is for the most part, a student leadership program. It does some adult leadership, but it connects with band programs around the country, and especially in the state of Texas. There's 2 main outlets for leadership instruction. One, we do large-scale drum major camps at different universities throughout the state. And we also do site-based individual leadership camps, mostly for bands, but also for dance groups or student councils and things like that. And it is staffed by a bunch of Texas band directors, a bunch of great friends of mine. Jeremy Spicer owns SASI, and it's the leadership model that we actually opened Vandegrift with, and that we still continue to use, and the trainings that we still continue to use. But it is a special group of band directors that just get together, and we're passionate about developing young leaders and and teaching kids to want to be better kids.
So the other thing you mentioned is when you open up the program that you guys examined a bunch of programs around the country to build a utopian car. And so I have two questions.
Yeah.
I have two questions with that. One, because I know that sometimes we have to just kind of take everything in and then spit it out in our own way. So what I want to ask is, do you remember what programs you might have studied? And then how did that car drive the first year or two?
It drove very slow. We grabbed systems and processes from everywhere. Obviously, we were splitting off of Cedar Park High School, and Cedar Park was doing wonderful things at the time with their band program. But a lot of the systems and processes for how we operated, or a lot of logistics of what we did, came from Cedar Park, and we tweaked them and we made them our own. We tried to get into band halls around the state. Stephen F. Austin High School at the time was using a different model. Instead of using a color guard, they were using a ballet-based dance group. And we really loved that idea, and we thought it would really work well and thrive in our community. So we grabbed that, and we created what's called the Vision Dance Company. So we don't have a color guard. We have a ballet modern based dance company that dances with our marching band. We tried to grab a lot of pedagogy ideas from Amanda Drinkwater at the time up at Marcus High School, and Tom Shine who was at Duncanville High School. How are you doing your fundamental work? What is that? What is the class experience feel like for the kids? From bell to bell, what does a kid experience in a class period? And we just pulled different things. Marching band, we went to some of our friends that we thought were doing the best job in their drum corps organizations in terms of teaching visual technique, and we would steal this forward technique from this drum corps and this exercise from this other place. We tried to hire in, and this is something that I learned from Eddie, and I am so grateful learning it from him. We tried to bring in the very best private lesson teachers, not just to teach our students, but to teach the staff. And we leaned on them for instrument pedagogy. Some of my favorite rehearsals was, and this was again a suggestion from another school, were those rehearsals where we dedicated a 2-hour rehearsal just to our private lesson teachers, and they all came in, and we just stood on a podium and waved our arms, and they swarmed the group and worked the kids and gave so much individual feedback. So we pulled from these different places and these different ideas, mostly high school ideas, but also from drum and bugle corps, some collegiate things, and we threw it all in a blender and tried to make it our own. We branded it with our stuff, and off we went. And it was, I think, for anybody opening up a new school, regardless of how good of ideas they're getting from other places, they have to go into it understanding that it's a process, and it's going to take time, and it took time. The kids in that first year, bless their hearts, they were wonderful kids, but they struggled on their instruments, and we had to roll our sleeves up and overhaul lots of embouchures and make lots of tweaks and adjustments, and we just gradually grew and tried to create culture that would bring kids and make kids want to be part of the band program so that we could grow. And yeah, it's just, the car did not go very fast. It was not very shiny. It was not, it's kind of like buying that house where the bones of the house are going to work. It's good, but you got a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time to get it to be your own and be the way you want it to be. But I can tell you that one of the hardest experiences is building a school from scratch. But I have a special connection to the school. Where it feels like my family. I have my wonderful family at home, my wife and my daughter and my son, and I have the Vandegrift Band, and that's it's something that's near and dear to my heart. because I've gotten to see it come up from its earliest stages, and we have made tweaks and adjustments along the way, and we've made really good decisions and really bad decisions, and experienced as a program the best of times and the worst of times. So it's great.
Is there anything about teaching that you want to kind of pass on, like a hard-earned lesson or something that maybe you would want to spare someone from?
Yeah. The first one I would say is, I think, I don't mind saying this in public, I think this is probably stereotypical of Texas bands, but for a long time, I thought correct was musical. And I learned a lot about pedagogy and a lot about fundamentals, and I can nerd out on fundamentals with the best of them. But since Richard Floyd walked into my band hall 7 years ago, and we worked on Lincolnshire Posy together with my wind ensemble. He gave me the very important reminder that he asked me, we did a rehearsal one day, and I think we were rehearsing the second movement. And we went to my office afterwards, and he said, "Mike, why did you become a band director? What happened?" And we finally got to my answer. It took him a while of prodding me for me to come out and say, "Well, Mr. Floyd, I love playing music." And as a kind of over emotional high school boy, probably playing music allowed me to express myself in ways that I would never be comfortable doing any other way. And he asked me, "Well, are you teaching your kids to love music the same way?" And he left just like that. And I was like, oh goodness, and I think it's one of those things, if there's something that I think has been a game changer for me, has been the constant quest of combining, the technicality of what we do with the artistry of what we do. And it's, if there's any Texas band directors listening right now, and Mark, I'm going to blast this out to the Texas band directors and make sure they're listening to your podcast.
That's good. That's good. Welcome.
Don't forget, as Mr. Floyd says, don't forget to color outside the lines, or be willing to color outside the lines a little bit and be artistic and be musical. And it's so much more fun that way. Get back to why you love to play music, and then ask yourself, are you teaching kids to love music just as much as you did? It's just like that history teacher we talked about. They were a great history teacher because they just totally dorked out and told you a story.
Remember your first term of teaching? Learning all the skills that you don't get taught in music school? Managing a transitioning culture in your classroom? Finding out that you have to teach guitar this term? During those early years, we found out that leaning on a community of music educators was important, not only for building that knowledge in ourselves, but also maintaining enough sanity to serve the students right in front of us. Amused is a podcast centered around a community of music teachers. Between the four of us, we teach choir, band, orchestra, general, jazz, and marching band at the elementary through collegiate levels. We certainly don't have all the answers, but you're welcome to listen in while we try to find them. Join us while we work through the challenges of music teaching and celebrate the joy of bringing music making into the lives of young people. In each episode, you'll hear stories, both good and bad, about that week of teaching, and we'll try and tackle an issue that one of us is struggling with. Something we're all taught is that music brings people together, but being the only teacher in your subject at a site can be really isolating. We think everyone ought to be a part of a community, and you're welcome to come join ours. Episodes come out on Wednesdays during the school year, and you can find us wherever you get your podcasts and at amusedcast.org.
All right, Mike. So I have a group of questions that I ask each one of my guests, and it's become kind of this, common thread throughout the podcast. And so you're in Texas, and this is a big question for the Texans that come on the show. Where do you draw the line between healthy and unhealthy competition in music?
I think that I would say this, quote unquote competitive success is symptomatic of other better things happening in your program. I think if you focus, I think the healthy way to approach competition is to not really talk about it and to give kids clear goals. Like if we're working with the marching band, guys, here's your weekly goal. Here's what I want you to be by the end of the week. Here's what I want you to be by the end of next week. And we create a bubble around those kids, and we develop extremely high expectations for them to meet. And you know what? If we go to a contest and people really like it, then good for us. You know, I never quite know what's going to happen when we go to a competitive situation. Even in a year like that, last year, we were leading up to an Indianapolis show. We took the band up to Grand Nationals and we had a great experience, but I try hard to make sure that the competition doesn't define what we're doing. I think if you live and die by competition, that you're gonna die more than you live. If you put the success of your group or the percepted success of your group in the hands of others, somebody's always going to not like what you're doing. So I think people have to be careful. They have to find enjoyment in the process. You know, if you're in that situation, if you put yourself in that situation of as a band director of saying, well, once I achieve this, I'll be happy, or once I achieve this, I'll be happy. Well, honestly, you're just going to keep moving the goalpost. You've got to enjoy the process and create a culture for the kids. And oftentimes if you're teaching the kids how to play well and you're pushing them and having high expectations, the quote unquote competitive success will take care of itself. Sometimes it won't, and that's okay. But I do think it's something that we need to be having conversations about as educators, because I think it's driving costs up, and I think it's causing band directors, especially around year 10, year 11, to kind of burn out and not want to do it anymore. I think it is a worthwhile subject. And I think it's something that I hope with all this, it's kind of like I just said with the COVID-19 stuff, I hope we are able to back up, tap the brakes on the competitive aspect of what we do a little bit on the other side of all this.
So, Mike, listening to you and talking to you, and, I was a high school band director. That was my first gig. It's a ton of work. It's a lot of hours. Do you ever envision yourself going back to teaching middle school or beginners?
Actually, I'm actually finishing up my master's degree in administration right now. And I think if I had a new direction, I think it would be not anytime soon necessarily, but it would be to get into some sort of fine arts administration position where I get to dedicate my time to mentorship of teachers and other adults. I think that would be, that is a door I want to have available to myself later, which is why I've finally taken the time to get the degree. I'm a couple months away from finishing, and I think that would be my next step in my next direction.
All right. So the next question, it kind of plays off this a little bit. And, there's the old joke about the first car in, the last car out. But how did you find a work-life balance, or how do you find a work-life balance as a band director?
Very honestly, I have a wonderful wife, Amber, she is committed to being part of what I do, and she kind of calls it the family business when it comes to teaching the band, and she works with me and we work with each other to develop very clear priorities. I think in terms of work-life balance, I think as a teacher, you've got to create some non-negotiables for yourself. One, you've got to set a time where you're going to go home, period. And if the work's not done, and it's not going to be done, but you go home and you be a dad, or you be a husband, or you be a friend, or you just do something that you like to do, So I think that's a big part of it. And I think the other part of it, honestly, not to take things back to the competitive piece of it, but if you are all wrung out and hung up and tied up, and everybody thinking that your group is good, or your group being competitively successful, or any of those things, then you're never going to be able to relax yourself enough to enjoy teaching music, in my opinion. So I think it's having work priorities and not being overly competitively driven, and having non-negotiables for yourself. And when go home when it's time to go home, and dang it, when you get home, be home. Turn the email off, put the cell phone down, and do something you like to do, or be present with your family. And I think it's, we have to have those times where we have those times of deposits in terms of doing something that's not band. It can't all be if it's all work, you're never filling your cup back up. We just got to be real careful in how we treat that situation.
All right, Mike, this is a big question. And, we all see the music education world and the band world from our own perspective. But what are the big challenges in your eyes facing music education or band? And how do we best meet those challenges?
Well, I'm going to speak to this as a Texas band director. And that is, something that we're looking at here in Texas is we need to be, the students have a lot of options, and I'm not sure, I'm not as in touch of what's going around all around the country, but our students coming into sixth grade, they can do lots of different things. If 10 years ago, they could do band, or they could do PE, or they could do, choir, and that was it. And now there's a bunch of different electives. There's a bunch of different choices. There's all sorts of different places they can go. And I think it's a challenge in music education to make sure that we're still bringing kids into the band world or into the choir world. On top of that, we get into high school, and expectations in high school is certainly, high school is much, much harder than it was 20 years ago. And I think if we're not cautious on how we navigate our expectations from the students with the demands of a modern day high school, that we can lose them. We can lose the students to just the inability to not be able to fully participate in your program. So I think it's something we have to be cautious of. Obviously, I think it's all of our jobs to be advocates of the importance of the arts in our schools. I know in my state, you feel the pendulum swinging back a little bit towards our communities understanding that importance. It seems maybe that's just the optimism in me. But navigating schedules and participation, and making sure we advocate to the parents so they really feel like it's important.
No, I think we're seeing that a little bit. I think you're right. I think the pandemic is putting the SEL portion of band and music back into perspective for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
All right, Mike. So I imagine I just invented a time machine, and I'm going to take you back to the afternoon of your high school graduation. What advice were you giving yourself?
Oh, wow. That I can say online.
Yeah. G-rated, please.
G-rated. Advice I'm giving to my high school graduate self. It took me a second to realize I didn't know what I was doing and to start learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was in a small town. I thought I was great at what I was doing. But my advice would be to surround yourself immediately with people that are better than you, and know that they will always be out there, and you need to constantly work and you need to constantly learn. There's a lot of things that a lot of learning curves for me once I got into school to get caught up, as a small town, a rural small town Texas musician. But I just hadn't learned, from just basic music literacy to having a much broader concept of all the different possibilities that the whole music world has to offer. So just open your eyes, Mike. Open your eyes. There's a big world out there.
All right, Mike, this is a question a lot of people struggle to answer as well. And that's, if you had a choice, what would be the final work for wind ensemble or band that you'd want to conduct or perform, and why?
Lincolnshire Posy.
Lincolnshire Posy. That was quick.
Without a doubt. No, it is. I'm going to do it again. I've only done it once, and I think it was a pivotal moment for me. It was a moment when not just I really dug into getting past just trying to have a correct sounding band and trying to have a musical sounding band, because that piece just doesn't work without that. And I brought in some big mentors at the time with, that's where I just started to develop a several year mentorship with Mr. Floyd. And, I sat down with Jerry Junkin at the time, and he spent 2 hours going cover to cover on my score with me. And I just learned how to study a score and learned how to love a piece I was conducting. And it was a game-changing experience. And I'm going to do it again, because if there's something that my mentors have told me, is that every time you do that piece, you learn something new from it. So that is just immediately, without thinking, even though I've done it once, it is whenever I have my last band. Hopefully I know it's happening. I know it's my last band, but whenever I have my last band, I want to play that piece. And the great thing about that piece is, even with its age, if you didn't know any different, you could think it was written in 2014 or 2015. It's timeless, in my opinion. So that would be it, without hesitation.
Sure. Okay. All right, Mike, is there anything coming up? And again, this is an odd question in the middle of a pandemic, but is there anything coming up that you'd like to share or promote?
Coming up that I'd like to share or promote? Ooh, that's a tough one. It is an odd question, because we're in the middle of a pandemic. I do want to promote, I hope educators are understanding the value of a lot of our conventions and conferences are being forced online. And I think in some ways it's making people excited that they can participate in things that they haven't done before. In some ways it's turning people off from attending those events. But, I want to take a second to promote we did our online convention and clinic here at our summer convention, Texas Bandmasters Association, which I was a little skeptical about. We did it back in July, and it's just a fantastic event that was put together. And I would be remiss not to tell everybody online that they need to take a close look that clinic or that convention that might be canceled, whether it's what Midwest has planned, or, here in Texas with what we may be looking at a virtual TMEA in February, and to take those as opportunities and not let those opportunities pass them by. I reassure if you're going to Midwest in 2021, should there be one, come and see the concert and come say hello. But hopefully by that time we're the other side of that. But if you have the opportunity to take part in some of these virtual learning opportunities, man, it's the sky's the limit. I mean, it seems like anybody is willing to come into a band hall right now. You can call a famous composer, conductor, leadership guru. You call them up, and they're there in your Zoom conference talking to all your kids. I think as long as we're not afraid to make the call, I would challenge anybody to get some of these people talking to your kids, and to get out there and attend these virtual events and listen to these people speak that we may, in a different situation, not have the opportunity to sit and listen to, the 5 most renowned wind conductors in the country, just having a chat with each other. You know what I mean? So take advantage of those opportunities over the next few months.
All right, Mike, how can people get in touch with you?
So you can shoot me an email, at mike.howard@leanderisd.org. I am certainly always willing to share any information that we ever use. I have Dropbox folders and Google Drive files that I always share with people. And I think one of the wonderful things about band directing is everybody seems willing to share information. So you can steal any of our stuff, any of the stuff we use at Vandegrift, which has probably been stolen from somewhere else, honestly. And please don't hesitate to shoot me an email. I'd be happy to share anything I can to help further the profession and further what we're doing with my colleagues. So shoot me an email. Love to hear from you. I'm on Facebook too. I'm not on Instagram yet. We have a Vandegrift Band Directors page, but You can certainly look me up on Facebook also.
Excellent. Mike, thanks so much for your time.
Absolutely, Mark. I really appreciate the invitation.